So the first thing that was done improperly is that you were rushed back and thrown up on the exam table. You didn't have any time to calm down, relax, chillax. Your doctor should bring you to a room and let you sit for 10 minutes in a quiet, dark room and relax. Only then will they get a real blood pressure on you. If you're stressed, angry, upset, running late, your blood pressure can be up to 50 millimeters of mercury higher than what your actual blood pressure is. So just that one thing alone can make your blood pressure 50 points higher or somewhere in that range. The next thing is you should always have your blood pressure checked with an empty bladder. So always go and urinate before you get your blood pressure checked. If you have a full bladder when they check it, it can make your blood pressure anywhere from 10 to 20 points higher than it would have been otherwise. Yeah. If you're sitting with your legs crossed or you're sitting on the exam table and your feet are dangling and not resting flat on the floor, that can increase your blood pressure from 2 to 8 millimeters of mercury. A cup of coffee or 3 the morning that you're going to get your blood pressure checked can add anywhere from 5 to 25 points to your blood pressure reading. And that doesn't mean that you have high blood pressure. It just means that they checked it after you'd had 3 cups of coffee. That's going to make your blood pressure temporarily higher, but it does not mean that you have hypertension. The next thing is being cold. If you're just in a really cold room, your blood pressure is going to falsely be 2 to 10 points higher than if you were in a nice, comfortable room temperature setting. Many nurses don't know this. Many doctors don't know this. If the nurse is talking to you and you're replying, so she's saying, okay, have you had any new medications, started or stopped? Have you had any recent family? All that stuff's going to raise your blood pressure by up to 10 millimeters of mercury just by talking while the nurse is checking your blood pressure. How many times has that happened to you in your doctor's office? If the blood pressure cuff that the nurse is using on you is the wrong size, most frequently too small, that can add anywhere from 2 to 10 points to your blood pressure score falsely. And so make sure that the cuff size that the nurse picks is the correct size for your arm. So if you have bigger arms and they use the regular size cuff, that's 2 to 10 points higher right off the bat. Now, I mentioned earlier that being stressed, angry, upset, that can add up to 50 points. So if the nurse rushes you back to the exam room and does not give you 10 to 15 minutes of quiet, relaxed time to get back to what is actually your normal blood pressure, that can also add 10 to 50 millimeters of mercury to your blood pressure. Yes. And so I think you can already, I'm not even through with the list, and you can already see your doctor's office does many of these things wrong, and you may very well be falsely diagnosed with hypertension when you don't actually have hypertension at all. If the nurse checks your blood pressure through your shirt sleeve, or even worse, through your shirt sleeve and your sweater or your coat, that can add anywhere from 10 to 20 false points to your blood pressure reading. And this comes straight from the American Heart Association themselves. So yeah, you've got to take your shirt off in order to get an accurate blood pressure reading. You've got to take your blouse off. Now, obviously, many nurses and many doctors' offices, they're busy. You're busy. You don't really want to get naked unless you have to. But in order to know what your real, actual blood pressure reading is, there should be no clothing between your skin and the blood pressure cuff. So now let's talk about how to properly check a blood pressure. And what I really want you to do is to buy a blood pressure cuff that checks on your upper arm. And I'm going to link to one in the show notes that's available on Amazon. It's very reliable and it's very easy to use. And you can actually check this at home, because really your blood pressure at home, that's the number you should really be concerned about. In the European clinics, they seldom even check a blood pressure in the office unless they think that your blood pressure is super high. They want it checked at home, and they'll send you home with a blood pressure cuff, because that's actually an actual blood pressure reading. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your cuff off Amazon. You're going to sit down, relax, chillax, do some deep breathing, maybe turn the lights down for 10 to 15 minutes. And this may seem like a lot of rigmarole, but this is how all the research is done to arrive at that 140 over 90 or that 120 over 80 if you believe in the American Heart Association blood pressure fairy. So, but that's where that 140 over 90 came from. Everybody in that research study sat for 10 to 15 minutes in a quiet, dark room. Then they checked their blood pressure. You need to replicate that. And so after you've sat for 10 or 15 minutes and you've really calmed down, then you're going to check the blood pressure and you're going to write it down. Roughly 12 hours later, you're going to repeat that same process. And you're not going to have any clothing between you and the cuff. You're going to have an empty bladder. You're going to be in a nice, comfy room temperature room. You're not going to be upset, mad, pissed off, upset. You're going to have slept good the night before, because if you get a bad night's sleep, that can raise your blood pressure anywhere from 5 to 30 points. Yes. And so then you're going to take that second reading and write that down. You're not going to chase your blood pressure. If it was higher than you wanted it to be, don't worry about it. Write it down and forget it. If you start chasing it and repeating, that's going to be stressful and that's going to make it go up. So don't do that. You're going to do this once a day for somewhere between 7 and 14 days. At the end of that time, you're going to average up your numbers. That's your actual blood pressure reading, and I can almost guarantee you it's going to be significantly lower than the number that your doctor got at his or her office. And so I really highly encourage you, if you think you've been misdiagnosed with high blood pressure, then buy this good blood pressure cuff and check your blood pressure just exactly as I've given you instructions to do for 14 days. Average your numbers up. And if those numbers are well under 140 over 90, you, my friend, don't have high blood pressure. Congratulations. This is Dr. Barry. I'll see you next time.